Good Friday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Browns, a Thursday night exhibition game. Cade York looked pretty good early, 3 for 3, and then he didn't look good. A chance to win the game with a 40-plus yard field goal, no good. But hang on, an illegal formation against the Eagles gives them another chance. So Cade York again trying to end this game, tied at 18, under 2 minutes left, and this time he hooks it. No good. Back-to-back misses on potential game winners after he had made 3. It was 3 for 3 earlier in the game, and you see that one just kept going and never came back. So obviously the concerns continue with the Browns kicking game. As you might guess, plenty of people want to talk about it. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Good game tonight, but Cade York's got to go. I know it's just preseason, but this kid misses when it's time, when it's crunch time. He made 1 field goal that people fell in love with against Carolina, but preseason or not, he missed the game winner. If he'd have made his field goal last week, the Browns would have won. He's not the guy for Cleveland. We can't have that liability on the team of in a close game and we have to count on a kicker to win the game. He's not that guy. I don't care if they drafted him. I know Andrew Berry loves his draft picks, but you got to see that this kid, there's just something wrong with this kid. When the lights are on, he blanks. So just my opinion. I know a lot of people say give him a chance, but I've seen enough in the preseason. We can't take him into the regular season hoping for him to win a game. He just don't got it. When it's time to shine, he blows out. So go Browns. Please find a new kicker.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature. Jared, I get what the caller is saying. If you expect to be an elite team, you're going to have to win close games. You're going to have a kicker that makes his field goals.
And it looks like the Cleveland Browns believe that kicker is going to be Cade York. And it was Kevin Stefanski last night. Kevin Stefanski today has reiterated their belief in Cade York's ability to be that kicker. And I really not sure, because kicking is something so different than any other part of the game to analyze how he is not making his field goals. He's just not. It doesn't look comfortable. The ball rarely is going end over end or looking like what most kicks look like, but his kickoffs are good. He's fine in warm-ups, but even in warm-ups, his ball goes left to right, right to left. It does a lot of things, and it just feels like something is off there from a consistency perspective, whether that is just with him, foot placement, plant foot. I think there's some issues with him kind of lean back versus going forward. Is there little issues with the punter holding the ball? Is there something going on there? But the reality is he's not making kicks, and that's one of the positions where that's really all that matters. In every other position, you're talking about the defender and what he did, or the offensive player and what he did to affect the defensive player. As a kicker, it is really a zero-sum game of making kicks, and nothing about what Cade York does looks like we see from other, even really good kickers. I think the concern is they've seen it happen where Zane Gonzalez, gone, looks good after he's gone. Even last year, Chase McLaughlin was terrible 2 years ago. I think he made 71% of his kicks. He goes over to Indianapolis, Bubba Ventrone, who is now the Browns special team coordinator, and he looks really, really good. And so I don't have an explanation for it, but it looks like the Cleveland Browns have decided whatever they see and whatever they value, Cade York is going to be their guy. I'm not sure what it takes after the first 3 games of preseason. If they're not bringing in competition now, what would it take for them to bring in competition?
Yeah, that is a fair question, and I'm with you. I have no idea the intricacies of kicking, but this doesn't look good. Kevin Stefanski talked about the missed field goal last night.
I mean, I think it's preseason, so everybody's working through the preseason, and certainly, as you know, Tony, Cade wants to make those so that we can finish as a team, so we can go get that W. But he's like any young player. He's like any player on our roster that it's preseason, so he's got to continue to work through it.
How happy were you that it looked like he had rebounded by making 3 of 3 for those?
Yeah, again, I think Mary Kay, with the preseason, you're constantly trying to perfect your craft. Obviously, making the first 3 is great, and then he knows he wants to make that last one. So that's something that I think he'll continue to work through.
Jared, they're not going to say it publicly. Behind closed doors, you got to be concerned. You have to be really concerned.
You do, and I think the caller hit the nail on the head, but didn't realize it when he said it. It's really about big games. I think this Browns team, if they're not good enough to beat most of the teams on their schedule, then it really doesn't matter that Cade York is not good. And I don't mean that to be flippant or anything else. They have spent so many resources on Deshaun Watson, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Okoronkwo, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Denzel Ward. Across the board, they have spent so many resources on those players that if this Cleveland Browns team is struggling and needing a field goal to win games against, I'm not going to try to create any billboard material, but against those types of teams, then they already have a problem. But the problem is that the Browns are going to need that kicker against the Cincinnati Bengals, probably against the Baltimore Ravens, probably against the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, or whoever they might see in the playoffs. And that's where it really, really matters. The fact that Cade York is probably not going to be the one that derails their actual season, he could be the one that derails the playoffs and some of those more important games. And I'm just not sure what the Browns see that tells them to not even bring in competition.
Yeah, again, that was a glaring concern late in the game because the game was on the line and it just didn't happen. Now, having said that, there were some good things. Not a lot of the starters played, but a guy that just keeps showing up, wide receiver Austin Watkins. And Watkins showing up again, over 100 yards receiving, bobbled that, turns upfield, and gets into the end zone for the touchdown. Take a look at this. Mahmoud Diabate with a safety to get the Browns on the board early in the game. And take a look at the overhead. Just textbook linebacker play and able to finish and bring the man down in the end zone. And then Ronnie Hickman, undrafted rookie free agent safety, gets another interception, ends up in the concussion. They're looking at him potentially with a concussion, due in part probably because of the way he got hit in the head after he intercepted that. But those 3 guys have consistently shown up. How impressed have you been with them?
I mean, we'll start with Watkins. It's interesting he's wearing Jarvis Landry's old number. He's a bigger player than Jarvis Landry, but you see a lot of kind of that similarity. He finds kind of those seams. He settles into zones. He catches pretty much everything coming his way. I think it's really interesting that the Browns have played him as much as they have. That can mean one of 2 things, that while many of us think he's got a roster spot or should have a roster spot, that they really aren't sure. David Bell plays in 3 series. Watkins plays the entire game, basically. Seems like someone who is competing for a spot. Or does Cleveland just really want to see and have him prove it? They want him to make the roster, but they just want to continue to push him to prove it, to make that roster, show that he can do on special teams, those kind of things. But overall, you cannot deny the production. And as one of our readers on Dawgs by Nature asked, if Watkins doesn't make the roster, and even Hickman here in a second, what is preseason even for when it comes to kind of roster decisions? If GMs and coaches have already decided who's going to make the roster based on where they were drafted, their speed, whatever it is, and not the fact that Watkins, Hickman, Diabate have looked good against quality opponents. It's not just in the fourth quarter. It's earlier in games, those kind of things. So Watkins is going to be an interesting one. I feel like almost every year or every other year, there's a Browns receiver that really kind of jumps out and we're like, oh, they've got to make the roster. And most of the time they don't, right? Kadarius Hodge is an example. There have been a variety of others. Hickman, 3 interceptions. Feels like him and D'Anthony Bell are kind of competing for that 4th safety spot. Many were surprised that Hickman went undrafted. I think Diabate is a really interesting one where we have to give some credit to the defensive line. Last year, the linebackers didn't look good, but we know the defensive tackles were terrible. And so even that safety, I believe that was Shelby Harris and Jordan Elliott playing in front of him. So they did what they're supposed to do. It allows the linebackers to do something, to flow to the football, to have open lanes, all of that kind of stuff. The reality is the linebacker, much like a wide receiver, is dependent on a quarterback. Linebackers are dependent on that defensive line, and Diabate really has taken advantage of that. He's very athletic. I think he makes sense as a player who can play on special teams. But right now, besides Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the Browns really don't have anyone that is planned on the roster starting next year. Everybody else is on a one-year contract. So Diabate makes sense as kind of maybe their long-term guy with JOK.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, somebody who thinks the Browns may be the surprise team in the AFC. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. NFL.com's Dan Hanzus on who he thinks the surprise team in the AFC will be.
On the AFC, the Browns, to me, are the team. And it's thorny because people don't want to see this as a potential situation, but you look at their roster and you look at both sides of the ball, and Deshaun Watson, as bad as he was for 6 games to end last season, I think it's way more likely he regains his Texans form. And that's another team that's sneaky, has a really strong offensive line, a defense that got better. Elijah Moore was an interesting add to that offense. Amari Cooper, I think, is going to be the man there again. And I think I like Njoku as kind of a guy that could really break out in a big way with a full year of Watson. I think that's a loaded division, the North, and a competitive division. But I'm picking the Browns to win it.
Jared, it's kind of interesting as you get further and further along in preseason, more and more people are starting to come to the realization this roster is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good roster. And I think the reality is that Deshaun Watson just has to be pretty good for what Hans has said to become true. Unfortunately, the AFC is really great, right? If the Browns were in the NFC South, everyone would be predicting them to be, to win the division, compete with the Philadelphia Eagles. Unfortunately, the AFC and the AFC North are really, really good. And so I think Hansis is absolutely correct. It's a great roster. I think outside of quarterback, because we just don't know on Watson, I think there's a lot of good there. I think the Browns roster may be top 2 or 3, in the NFL this year. Again, outside of quarterback. And so to win the AFC North and to be competitive for the wild card, I think Deshaun Watson needs to be a pretty good quarterback. If they get anything close to what he was with the Houston Texans this year, the Browns will be in discussion. Again, barring injury, but that's true everywhere. Barring injury, the Browns will be in the discussion with the Chiefs, with the Bills, with the Bengals. Really, I think that's going to be the class of the AFC, maybe the Jets. But even that, there's a lot of young players, and you can't have a bad offensive line in the division and in a conference that has a lot of great pass rushers. So I think Hansis has hit the nail on the head. Now the Browns need to prove me and him right.
Yeah, again, we've said the rosters look good the last couple of years. It hasn't worked. It goes to show you how important quarterback play is in the NFL, in today's NFL. I know you've written an article about this for Dawgs by Nature. Decisions at 3 positions that could hurt the Browns in 2023. And first, you say lack of running backs added to the roster. Take us through the thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, all of these we've seen early in training camp and preseason season already. Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford were expected to be the 1-2 punch to replace Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, and Jerome Ford, right? So all of a sudden, Ford is moving up 2 spots to the 2nd spot, and he gets injured. That means you are right now, if the Browns had to play a regular season game, they don't, thankfully. It is Nick Chubb, John Kelly, Demetric Felton, Hassan Hall, Wilkins, who they signed just recently. There's just not a lot of depth there. And so I think when you look at decisions they made, it doesn't mean the decisions are wrong, but all of a sudden a Jerome Ford injury, who in and of himself is not a proven player, now has the Browns looking at either overusing Nick Chubb, not running the football enough, or depending on players that most of us would predict or would think would either be last man on the roster or practice squad players, all of a sudden you're going to be using those players as your second back. So I just think it's concerning because that injury happened. We already have that concern. This isn't week 8, 10, 12. Running backs tend to get beat up. We're talking about preseason training camp injury, leaving us with Nick Chubb and a ton of question marks behind him.
Yeah, and it being a hamstring, those soft tissue things can go away and come back. That's another element to that. The other is bringing back linebacker group that struggled and was injured. That was second on that.
Yeah. I mean, we just talked about Diabate, but the reality is the Browns don't really have anybody outside of JOK that they feel any certainty of. Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki are returning from injuries. All signs are that they're doing well, but neither of them are playing in preseason. The rest is pretty much special teams. Matthew Adams, Kunazik, like those are special teams players that you hope do something. And so, again, we knew it was a problem last year. We hope the defensive line improvements are going to help Walker and Takitaki, but that's not certain, right? And so the fact that they signed, again, 1-year contracts, special teams players, really they have no plan, no future outside of JOK. And we're not getting to see Anthony Walker or Sione Takitaki play. And so maybe, again, early in the season, that's really what the article is focused on. Early in the season, 2 of your 3 starting linebackers, if you're going to have that Sam linebacker and Takitaki on the field, won't have a snap possibly in preseason and haven't played. Anthony Walker got hurt, I think it was week 3 last year against the Steelers. Wouldn't have played a game for almost a year for him. And then Takitaki, most wouldn't expect an ACL for him to be back so soon. It's just concerning when you start the season the way the Browns do with that schedule. The Ravens, the Bengals, the 49ers. I mean, they just have a bunch of teams, the Titans. They got a bunch of teams that linebacker play could be really important for.
The other one was not bringing in a kicker to compete with Cade York. We've talked about that quite a bit. Anything you want to add to that one?
No, I mean, I guess the question would be did they not bring in competition because they just had that much belief in York, or were they worried about stressing York out, right? If it's the second one, we got a lot of concerns there about them kind of babying him. If they just had that much confidence, we have the concerns then more about the front office and the coaching staff.
All right. One of the things we've seen a couple times is DeJuan Jones and how he's played. I always love to take a listen to guys that have played the position at the NFL level. Brian Baldinger breaking down DeJuan Jones from the Eagles game.
One of my favorite players to study this preseason has been the right tackle of the Browns, DeJuan Jones. Here, Nolan Smith is in a wide 9. Watch him kick out to the wide 9. And then the hands. Like, look at the length that he's got right there, all right? There's so many good things to watch. Now, almost like Joe Thomas, watch his vertical set. Watch him push off that inside leg and fly out of his stance. And when he turns the corner, just dump him. Dump him into the trash can, all right? Now, watch the short set now. See, now he's got a different set. Look at his hands. This is short set. He's got to change this up, all right? Now, short set. Get on him. Bam. Watch the length. Like, this is Ohio State, Georgia national championship game right here. Excellent, okay? Now you get this. This right here, not just DeJuan Jones, but at the end of this, just freeze it, and all you Brown fans, just take a photo of that. That's a perfect cradle of love right there.
Jared, again, Brian Boldinger does great stuff. The thing that keep in mind, Nolan Jones is a defensive end. He looked like a cornerback going up against DeJuan Jones with the size mismatch there.
Yeah, he did. I mean, there were a couple snaps where Nolan, his bend, his ability to get low, it's really one of the biggest concerns for DeJuan Jones is some of those pass rushers who can really bend the edge and kind of get low and get around the corner are going to cause him a little bit of problems. And I think, offensive line play is so easy to talk about and so hard to really break down. Baldy does such a great job. There was a clip that the Browns decided to share of Jones against Brandon Graham. And initially it's one of those things where you see it the first time like, oh, wow, he really kind of controlled Graham. And then you watch it again and try to understand kind of what was going on. And really the play, Brandon Graham was able to make the quarterback move from where he was. And while it looks like Jones was in control, Graham really created some problems for the Browns offense. So, again, I think we love what we've seen from Jones. We love that most likely not going to see him starting outside of injury for the first year or so. Even this week, we saw more Hudson in practice at right tackle once Conklin went out, even though he's really Jed Will's backup at left tackle. I think the fact that Jones has looked so good, that he's lost weight, that he is taking some of the tips from Joe Thomas, it's just something to celebrate and something to be excited about when we talk about the future of the Browns offensive line.
You wrote an article about that. You're kind of seeing it take shape. Take us through that and what you liked about that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. The Browns have talked a lot of good about James Hudson. I'll just be honest. There are times that I worry about his ability to anchor against a strong pass rusher or even against the run. I think he might benefit from moving inside. But the Browns have really lauded Hudson as a really good starting level offensive tackle. And so whether Jedrick Wills sticks around or not, you have Hudson who could step in as a left tackle. Luke Whippler has looked really, really good, and they're starting to give him some snaps at guard. I believe he had 15 this week at the guard position to see if maybe it's a possibility that Ethan Posick is your center for a couple more years and Whippler can play guard. And then you have DeJuan Jones at right tackle. The reality for the Browns is at some point in time, like most teams, they're going to have to cut bait on salary. Whether that is getting Joel Bitonio to restructure his deal in a way to take less money as he ages, or that's a trading of a Wyatt Teller, or moving on from Posick. The reality is, and Jack Conklin, obviously, he just got extended last year. The reality is the Browns got to get cheaper somewhere. And the idea that they could actually get cheaper with Bill Callahan coaching up these young guys on a rookie contract is actually really exciting and something that maybe Conklin brings back some trade value. Maybe Posick does the same thing, Teller, whoever it is they decide to move on from, because of Bill Callahan and because of these three young guys that really look like they're ready to step in the near future, hopefully no earlier than next year.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, around this time in the previous 2 years, we looked at the Browns roster and said this looks like a playoff, possible Super Bowl roster. Then the real game started and we could see the team was missing the it factor. Now again, we're looking at the roster and we're thinking this has to be the best roster we have ever seen. Hopefully this year the results will be different. We picked up some veterans who have been to the playoffs, players who have leadership skills. We also went out and got Jim Schwartz, who's a leader and gets the most out of his defensive players. Hopefully, the aggressiveness and passion will come out in all phases of the team. If this happens, then a great season waits us. And the last thing, Dave, the Browns so far have been aggressive in filling in the holes where needed. They better go out and get a second field goal kicker for competition with Cade York. This year, we cannot afford to leave any points on the field.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jared, we've talked about that. I think in addition to the veterans that they've brought in, every time you hear one of those guys talk, you like what you hear. Jim Schwartz and Bubba Ventrone are equally as important. I think it's just a different mix of personalities in the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is Kevin Stefanski is always going to be who Kevin Stefanski is. And when that wins, it's calm, cool, steady, collected. That's what we saw in 2020, during the COVID season and everything like that. Wow, Kevin really stabilized the team. Kevin is always steady. And when it's not, fans want to hear yelling and screaming. They want Greg Williams again. They want all of that. But you're right. When you bring in someone like Jim Schwartz, who is loud and boisterous and all of that, you bring in a Bubba Ventrone who seems to vacillate a little bit in a good way, where he can be kind of that steady person, but he can also kind of get loud when needed. I think it does create a variety there that really can help. That there's not, you hear the same voice over and over again. It kind of drones out. And the reality is from both Mike Prefer and Joe Woods, from the outside looking in, I'm not sure how players were that confident in what those coaches were doing anyway. So now you have this different variety, and then you add the Dalvin Tomlinsons, the Rodney McLeods, the Juan Thornhills. Deshaun Watson is in control of this offense, and it's his voice and all of that. Like, I think you just see really the foundation of the team being a lot more solid than it's been in the past, and it's really exciting to see and really hopeful to see.
And again, we've talked about the kicker, and yeah, you can't miss kicks. There are going to be key games that you can't miss kicks. Colin Cowherd on teams that he feels will not live up to their lofty expectations in 2023. This from The Herd with Colin Cowherd.
The Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski, his wins have declined every year. We have a quarterback in Deshaun Watson, hasn't played much in the last 2 years, and the AFC's gotten very good at quarterback. The owner is impatient. Star quarterback, is he a star? He certainly paid like it. Rest of the division, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, very good. It's an annual tradition. Cleveland screws things up. High hopes, very good roster, elite people at the right spots. But Deshaun Watson at the end of last year looked rusty. Let's say he dusts the rust off and is just a B-plus quarterback. That will not do if you look at his contract.
I disagree. If he's a B-plus quarterback, they're a Super Bowl contender. But again, the amount of his contract, I don't know why people fixate on it. That's what they needed to do to get the quarterback that they hadn't been able to find for 30 years. It isn't that they thought he was going to be the best quarterback. It was they needed that quarterback, and he's 28 this year.
Yeah, I mean, from a contract perspective, people who are Browns and Cavs fans, remember J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson. They weren't worth their contracts. The Cavs needed to spend that money to keep them, yada, yada, yada. The reality of contracts and even draft position, right? So we're talking about Cade York or Anthony Schwartz. Those things should never be held against the player. The player would never, you and I would never turn down more money because we didn't think we were worth it. Right? Like, we'd never say, no, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm going to live up to that contract. We'd say, yes, please give me some more. Can I have a little more, and when's my next raise? Right? And so we use contracts and draft capital and draft selections and all of that. That should be used to judge the front office, the coaching staff, not the player. So Deshaun Watson being a B-plus player, this sounds very maybe looking for the floor, but I will sign up for that immediately right now, as long as you tell me the rest of the team is healthy. So, yeah, I think the reality is betting and talking against the Browns has been a winning place to go pretty much since they returned in 1999. So I get it. Like, you might as well – you're not really going out on a limb, even though the roster is really good. history tells us the Browns just haven't done it, even when the roster has looked pretty good.
The one thing I would say, if you want to make an exercise in getting yourself depressed, go back and look at the list of quarterbacks since 1999. And that will tell you why they haven't won. We did that the other day on the show. It is a depressing list.
It is. And one of the things I used to write about, and I've just stopped, is the Browns have literally tried everything except Deshaun Watson. And by Deshaun Watson, I mean a top flight quarterback. They have literally, whether it's coach, GM, new ownership, new whatever, they have literally tried everything. Young, Jeff Garcia, the older quarterback, with the team, we want to run first, pass first, defense first, sign free agents, build through the draft. They have tried everything. This is the first time they've literally had a quarterback that pretty much everyone would have said was a top 5 to 10 quarterback in the NFL, was a high draft pick, and proven in the NFL. This is the first time they've tried that. They tried to have that, but never got it. Yeah, it's a sad experience to look back at Browns history.
All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason one more time.
A lot of these Browns reporters really don't know what they're talking about. How Deshaun needs to chuck the ball down the field to open receivers and stuff like that in order to prove himself. But that's not where the league is as far as passing-wise. You don't have to chuck the ball down the field in order to score or in order to sustain drive. You can give 4 or 5 yards, passing the ball and still maintain the drive. This isn't a league where you can just pass it down the field and hopefully find success. You can't do that anymore. And I think reporters need to realize this is a new age of football where this passing league is evolving as it goes.
It's a wide open league. So what the Browns have finally in Elijah Moore, they had it in Marquise Goodwin. Finally, they have guys that defenders are going to play off of so that they can take the easy yards. They haven't had that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is I don't have the stat on it, but I don't agree with the caller at a general level. You have to be able to throw the ball downfield. If not, you're going to have the Ohio State JT Barrett offense where every defender is within 10 to 12 yards, of the line of scrimmage, tight windows, tip balls, interceptions, all that kind of stuff. You have to be able to throw the ball downfield. You have to have chunk plays. You need to be able to get points on the board as quickly as possible. And with the Browns defense, you want that. You want to have, Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith and Ogbonnia Okoronkwo on the field as often as possible, rushing the passer. And so, yes, you don't want to just, heave it down the field 40 yards every play, but you need to spread the field vertically and horizontally in the NFL nowadays, or you just are not going to score enough points. Players are too big, too fast. All those windows close very, very quickly. You have to open them up through routes, and you have to have players that can catch the ball and will take safety help and linebacker help with them, or it just doesn't matter just that you have them running down the field if you don't throw those balls.
All right, before I let you go, some news from around the AFC North. Jadeveon Clowney, our old buddy, going to get set to sign a 1-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens. So he's signed to be a complement to Ojabo and Odafe Oweh. Let's see how that works out. Again, Clowney was not good last year with the Browns.
No, and the problem for Clowney is the blunt reality is he's a really good run defender, and he's a strong defensive end who can push the pocket. He's not going to get sacks. But he believes, and I can tell you this from source people in Houston, Tennessee, not Seattle, but I've heard just rumors of, he thinks he should be a star. He thinks he should be a 15-sack guy, and that defenses and defensive coordinators, like he talked about with Myles Garrett last year, have kept him from that. The reality is his play is of someone who is a run defender and a pocket pusher, and he should be paid $4 to $5 million over the last couple of years, 6, 7, 8 max. But he thinks he should be rushing the passer, and defenses should have been set up to make him look good. He didn't realize by saying that, he realized he can't look good unless defensive set it up for him.
Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Jared.
Absolutely, brother. Good to talk to you always.
All right, Jared Mueller, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff, Dogs by Nature. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
So, hey, Dave, hey, guys. Cade needs some competition. This kicking stuff's got to stop. I mean, you don't have to kick it fancy. You just have to be able to kick the ball straight. You don't have to bend it in air and do magic tricks. We just need to make field goals. So I know he was a fourth-round pick, but I think we need to bring in some competition because we can't lose games just due to just the kicker. And Watkins is awesome. Definitely need to sign Watkins. All right, love you guys. What do you guys think? Woof, woof, go Brownies.
I've said it. They cannot lose games because of missed field goals. I don't know if it would be competition. I certainly would bring somebody in as a backup plan, but it doesn't sound like the Browns are going to do that. As far as Austin Watkins goes, I think you got to find a way to put him on the 53. I think if you try to sneak him on the practice squad, he's going to end up getting claimed by a receiver-needy team because he's got the size, he's got some elusiveness, the route running is he's just looked like an NFL receiver. And that's going to be a tough decision for the Browns. You know, it may come down to David Bell or Austin Watkins. I don't know what the Browns do in that instance. Kevin Stefanski, earlier today, talked about Cade York. He was also asked about the situation that he was part of on the staff at Minnesota, where the head coach, Mike Zimmer, moved off of Daniel Carlson after a couple of games in his rookie year. Daniel Carlson has gone on to become one of the best kickers in the NFL. He kicks for the Raiders. Here's Kevin Stefanski on that situation and patience with Cade York.
With any young player, certainly you've seen it with kickers. You do go through a tough period here or there. I have a ton of confidence in Cade because I've seen him do it in practice. I've seen him do it in games. So he'll continue to work. But it's really, you know, I really feel it's no different than any other player that they got to work on their craft. And now's the time to do that. Obviously, Cade wants to make every kick. We want him to make every kick. It's an occupational hazard that you're going to miss one. It's just how you deal with it and how you bounce back from it.
But just specifically about Daniel Carlson and Zim cutting him after 2 games. I mean, was that a teaching experience to you?
All of it's a teaching experience for me, Tony. You know, everything, of course. But I don't want to get into that specific situation. But, you know, I just, and I understand the question, but I do think Cade has the right mentality to continue to work through it.
It's concerning. It gets more and more concerning. You know, yesterday in particular, game winner. It doesn't get any more, this is what we need you to do than that. And to see the young guy struggle, I hope he gets it together. The Browns need him. They need a field goal kicker that's going to make the kicks, bottom line. If you don't have a kicker that is going to make kicks, you're not going to beat really good teams in the NFL. You just won't. Brian Baldinger, we saw him earlier in the show with DeJuan Jones. This time he breaks down Mahmoud Diabate in the Eagles game.
This Diabate at linebacker for the Cleveland Browns played 50 snaps last night. You know, he's out of Utah. He blows up this A-gap right here. And bam, he takes down Kenneth Gainwell for a safety. That got the Browns on the board. They got him their first 2 points of the day. Excellent play, great tackle in the end zone. Then he made this play. Like, here it is. Here he is right here. His eyes are in the right place because it looks like it's an inside zone. So you got to step up, right? But then he sees Mariota step back. So now he starts getting his depth, but his eyes are still on this line coming at him. So he goes, okay, screen. So now you got to stay alive. Here's Tyler Steen, 56. Blocked him. You got to stay alive. Stay alive. All right, because the ball carrier's coming. All right, here comes Trey Sermon. Now watch his right hand. Watch the right hand on Diabate. Bam! Punches that ball out. All right, that will set up another Brown score. I don't know what the depth chart of the Cleveland Browns linebackers look like, but Diabate made a little name for himself on Thursday night.
And again, you see it there, the two big plays that he made, recognition, some ability to run, some agility, he's in the JOK mode where he just seems to be able to find a way to get to the ball. Kevin Stefanski earlier today talked about what he has seen from Mahmoud Diabate.
Yeah, I thought Mahmoud acquitted himself very well last night. Like we talked about, he's a very active player, sideline to sideline. You love ball-aware players. You love guys that can knock the ball out, and he certainly did that. He's really taken practice field to game field. But like you mentioned, this is the part of training camp and the part of our business where we continue to get young players reps and ultimately make really tough decisions later on. But for us right now, really the focus is on just continuing to get better. We're very much in training camp mode still.
Diabate is a guy that you got to believe if you allow him some time to develop, could end up being a guy that makes an impact from the linebacker position. The question is, how do you get him on the 53-man? Because, again, he's shown enough that if you try to sneak him on the practice squad, there's a chance somebody's gonna go and poach him from you. ESPN's Get Up nationally debating what to expect from Deshaun Watson in 2023.
I just think it's tough to ask Deshaun Watson to be the 2020 quarterback this year.
Well, he better be.
This year.
If we're talking, hold on, when can we ask him to be that?
I'm saying he only played 6 games last year, and those 6 games didn't look good. He was off from football for, what, a year and a half?
So when can we ask a $230 million quarterback to They're not paying him to be good next year. I mean,
listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying Deshaun Watson isn't going to be good and take the steps. I'm saying 2020, he was the #1 passer in the National Football League.
Right.
33 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, completed 70% of his passes.
Right.
You're telling me we're going to get that from Deshaun Watson in 2023?
If you don't, then it's fair to expect it.
Yeah, then what are they paying for?
With an offense that's got a top 3 offensive line, a great offensive play caller, weapons galore on the outside, and a defense that's crazy talented, I don't think it's unfair to sit there and say, well, he should be as good as that. Those.
Give me 75% of what that was in 2020.
And that's very good.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
And again, I've said this all week long. People are fixating on passing numbers, touchdown numbers, interception numbers. He's got to be the guy that teams fear that the Browns have confidence in. 2 minutes, 3 minutes left in the game. It's a 1-point game. You've got the ball in your hands, Deshaun Watson. You have to find a way to make sure that the Browns put points on the board to get a win. That's what they're paying him for, to win. He's a guy that gives you the ability to win games from the quarterback position. The numbers that he put up with the Texans were so ridiculous because they were behind all the time. So with Nick Chubb, with the offensive line, with all the weapons, you don't want him throwing for 4,800 yards necessarily, unless that's the path to winning. He only won 4 games in 2020 with the Texans, so you don't want that. You want 12, 13 wins, and if that means he throws for 28 touchdowns and 4,000 yards, great, because he's got Nick Chubb to hand the ball off to as well. Don't fixate on passing yards, touchdowns, interceptions. What does he do? What does he do to make defenses have to defend him so that the Browns can use other weapons? That's the mark of a really good quarterback. The defense is concerned when Patrick Mahomes has the ball. They're concerned when Tom Brady had the ball. You want defenses to be concerned when Deshaun Watson has the football. This with the 33rdteam.com takeaways from the Browns-Eagles preseason game. 33rdteam.com, former NFL executive scouting types. So they say Cedric Tillman could make an instant impact. Browns didn't have a pick until 74 in 2023 after the Watson and Elijah Moore picks. They used that first pick on Tillman. A lot of people didn't think he was going to be there. He has looked good. He has looked polished. They've given him limited reps because they know he's going to be on the 53. And he's looked good. He particularly looks good when the play breaks down and Deshaun Watson has to scramble. He's also a big target, has shown good hands. Still a rookie. He's going to make some rookie mistakes, but you have to like what you see, and the 33rd team agrees could make an instant impact. They also say this: the Browns have a problem at backup quarterback, or a backup running back, rather. John Kelly didn't have his best game against the Eagles. Felton, spotty. We haven't seen Wilkins yet. I would say I could understand this, but I would also say the solution, if they really do feel that there's a problem at backup quarterback, comes when everybody has to cut down from 90 to 53 coming up in a couple of weeks. 10 days before the start of the season, everybody has to get down to 53 from 90 this year. It's not the 2 cut down days. So you're going to have 900 free agents, and I'm sure they will be on the lookout for not only running backs, but potentially linebackers and the likes to fill out the back half of that roster. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we are joined by Lance Reisland. We'll take a film breakdown, video analysis of Elijah Moore and who he reminds us of. Sports4CLE will be right back talking Browns. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. One of the big things with the Browns this season on offense, in addition to Deshaun Watson's play, how will the Browns use Elijah Moore, a really good weapon that they got from the Jets? Let's take a film and video breakdown of this. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. And Lance, we keep talking about the versatility of Elijah Moore. We haven't seen him a lot in the preseason, but you're kind of getting an idea what the Browns are thinking with him.
A lot with him. So he's able to come out of the backfield. The options are limitless in terms of out of the backfield. You can run speed option. You can run their pin and pull series. You can run zone with him. Out of receiver, you can put him at the slot. He can run all those routes. He can be outside. He can run all the receiver routes like Cooper can. He can be the gadget guy, the reverses. He can be the easy yards guy. He can be the guy that can lighten the box when teams are trying to put 7, 8, 9 guys in the box to stop Nick Chubb. I really think more than anything else, I know Watson's going to be fantastic, but I really think the addition of Moore is going to make Chubb even that much better. I think Nick Chubb is going to have a huge year, partly because of Elijah Moore.
Let's take a look at a couple of clips, and you can explain to us what we see. The first one, take us through this.
Oh, they're going to get him out of the backfield here. So they motion him. They kind of shift him over into the slot here on the bottom, and they're going to run a fade out. So they're going to run a kind of a deep kind of in route, and then a quick out by Elijah Moore here in the sideline. And what happens because of the personnel groupings, and this is what Kevin Stefanski likes to do. Now he can create a matchup here with Jamin Davis, this linebacker. So this linebacker covering Elijah Moore in space is an absolute mismatch for the Browns. And this is what having him in the backfield does, because now they want linebackers in the game to run the ball. Now, it didn't happen all the time in this game because preseason are everybody's staying base. But what you're going to get is you're going to get people who are either going to match up with nickel and dime personnel, or they're going to match up with big linebackers. And Elijah Moore kind of gives you the best of both worlds. If you're going to go big, they're going to throw you in space. If you're going to go small, they're going to run at you with that powerful offensive line. So he gives you a lot of versatility, and that's going to open it up for Nick Chubb in the run game and Watson in the pass game.
And again, you see the separation and an easy throw for Watson to make to gain yards. And again, that sets things up. Take us through this second clip and what you see with this one.
Run, this is the pin and pull. So this is a 3-by-1, and now he stays in the backfield. They're going to run a 3-by-1 pin and pull scheme here to the field, to the trips look. And Njoku's going to pin that defensive end, Chase Young, and they're going to get outside of it. And Elijah Moore has great speed. But once again, now they're in a power run set, even though they're in a 3-by-1, because Elijah Moore gives you that versatility. So again, the first play, you motion him out, you get spread, you let Watson do his thing. Now you run the power pin and pull. And even though this is to the edge, this is a power run. This is down blocks, and this is getting the big boys out in front. So this is what Kevin Stefanski likes to do. This is creating mismatches. This is getting the defensive personnel packages he wants on the field, and he's dictating, just like Jim Schwartz will do on defense, not the defense. And they're not changing their scheme. They're running pin and pull. They're running zone. Everybody talks about the scheme change. It's more of a personnel change, and he's going to run what he knows how to run and what he's really good at and what he's had great success with. Now he's got the pieces to make that scheme work.
The other thing I would say, watch the top of the screen when Watson hands him the ball. The other part of this play is that defensive lineman cheated, and Watson, if he would have pulled that out, Watson could have walked into the end zone, or he would have picked up substantially more yards. That's the next evolution of this. That's what they will do with a running quarterback like Deshaun Watson once they start game plan specific kind of things.
And what it does, you don't have to do anything new. So this is just a pin and pull scheme. So if it's just, if it's a non-running quarterback, it's automatically a give, or maybe a run pass option where you're throwing it. With Watson now, you're exactly right. They took multiple players out of the box by simply allowing him to pull it if that backside end crashes. And you hear the term all the time, zone read, but it's really not always zone read. It's just reading the backside end, because in a lot of run schemes at the NFL level, at all levels, the backside end is unblocked. So we always used to leave the backside end blocked, and when I had a runner, we would read them. And if we didn't have a runner, it was just an automatic give. So it just gives you another option. It gives you the ability to lighten the box. And again, the stuff they've done is, I've heard that Nick Chubb is he going to get the same amount of carries? He's going to get the same amount of carries, but I think he's going to have a huge year because he's going to run against favorable looks inside the box.
And again, this next clip, the third clip with Elijah Moore, you mentioned that. It lightens the box. It means fewer people that you're looking at.
So again, we talk about the run game last play where he could pull it on the zone read or pin and pull read. So this is just another option. Now they're underneath center, and Kevin Stefanski likes to get underneath center. So this is, the Patriots have 8 in the box. They're bringing the strong safety off the edge here at the bottom of the screen. So technically they have 8 in the box. This is just outside zone with the tag quick game here. This is quarterback and receiver. Everybody else is running zone to the right. Again, doesn't change anything. The offensive linemen get the practice zone during practice. They're not changing their blocking schemes. This will lighten the box. This will mean that you can't do this now, because this is what we've talked about for months. This is easy yards. This was, you're going to load the box, we're going to pitch and catch out here with our fast guy, make a miss, and you got a big play. And this is what the Browns can do now with Elijah Moore. All the run games, Watson can run, and you can always tag backside if they're trying to cheat and crowd the box.
Yeah, the other thing you notice there is the defender's like 7-8 yards off, and he misses a tackle. That is the definition of easy yards in the NFL. And you see he picks up the first down without any problem.
Absolutely.
All right, a lot has been made about Percy Harvin, because that's a guy that came up through the same system that Kevin Stefanski was in. Take us through what you see relative to Percy Harvin and Elijah Moore.
So right here you have, so they got the same type of body frame. So when I was at camp, I was really impressed how thick, especially his lower body, how thick and strong Elijah Moore is. And it kind of reminds me of Percy Harvin. He has a good, strong lower body. This is a power run scheme. This is a guard, kind of tight end gap scheme where you're going to pull the backside too. We always say it was just a gap scheme. So we're blocking down and we're bringing two. Whatever two teams bring, two different guys, but they're blocking down on the left and two guys are coming from the right, and it's the same side. He's able to, again, so they're technically in empty at the snap of the ball, Brett Favre days, and obviously you're going to get spread. Now you get motion. This is the same thing Percy Harvin did. So Percy Harvin, like Elijah Moore, simply being on the field causes eye conflict for defenders. So they have to find him, locate him, and see what he's doing. By doing that, again, you're thinking and not moving. And once you think, your feet don't move. And in the game of football, especially at the NFL level, it is so fast. And if you can't run, and if you're thinking they're going to block you or you're going to get run by. So this is what reminds me of Percy Harvin, is the ability to do so many different things. This is that power run like Nick Chubb would run. Elijah Moore can do this. So again, they're not giving away tendencies. They can run it, they can throw it. Whatever the defense decides to do, Stefanski is going to figure out what they're doing. And again, I've said it before, I think he's a great play designer. Now he has the puzzle pieces to make this puzzle work.
The other thing is, I look at that, is you see the guard pulling with a tight end. Can you imagine Wyatt Teller or Joel Bitonio pulling? Elijah Moore doesn't need a whole lot of space.
Yeah, what to do is that, so you have this, when you have these jet guys, these gadget guys, these guys who can make things in space, usually the ends are going to widen a little bit. The linebackers are locating where he's at. You see 21 coming in the box. He's a strong safety. All of a sudden, he has to take on a guard. He's now a run-fit guy. So now you got a guy who's not used to playing run. He has to take on a big guard. The Browns run this counter scheme as good as anybody in the NFL because of those guards. So right now, this would be, Big Teller coming up on a strong safety. That is a mismatch. But again, the eye discipline, what he does is very similar to what Percy Harvin did. He's a guy you have to account for every play. And the Browns have so many other weapons, it's going to make them very, very hard to game plan for.
Let me ask you this. We saw that, and with a running quarterback like Watson, is there always the potential that he could read that? I mean, that was Brett Favre. Brett Favre's not going to go out and run at that stage in his career. Is there always the ability to potentially pull that if somebody's cheating on Elijah Moore?
Browns are, so there's two different things. One is if the linebackers crowd the box, they can use that RPO game. But for the most part, every run that's going to the right, zone, pin and pull, any counter scheme, you are leaving that backside end. Now, in a counter scheme, the backside tackle will step and hinge on that end, but you can have him do something else. You could have him go to a linebacker or arc and get to the next level. So yes, every run, you can leave somebody unblocked that Deshaun Watson can read. In college, they don't just read the end in college. Sometimes in the NFL, I've seen it a couple times, but they'll actually read the three technique, and sometimes they'll read the linebacker. So every single play, you're not going to get that was a straight handoff to Percy Harvin. I don't think you're going to get many straight handoffs besides Nick Chubb downhill occasionally on first down. You're going to see a lot of this reading the end, reading a linebacker, either an easy pitch and catch or a designed run off, like a quarterback run off, reading that backside end. And they have some design runs, again, the +1, where you can get them out and have Nick Chubb be the lead blocker. So really a ton of stuff that you can do with all these pieces that Stefanski has.
Lance Reisland, it will be fun to watch as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
Thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff with the film analysis video breakdown, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports4CLE.